The numbers are in, and the polling is staggering for Trump. And what is more important is the actual early voting data, because the polling, we don't really know, how good it is, if it's really good. It might be completely skewed like it was in the past. I want to talk about the polling, but first I do want to talk about the early voting because of how important it is and how historical it is compared to last year. Now, this is from CNN. I'm going to put it up on the screen right now. Thank you, CNN. Not my first choice of, where I get my news, but this is a really good graph, and these are some of the key swing states where we have some of that voting data. And frankly, I'm happy that we have these swing states, because obviously North Carolina and Pennsylvania are ones that I've been looking very closely at. My prediction is that Arizona definitely is going for Trump. Nevada probably definitely going for Kamala Harris, unfortunately. But North Carolina and Pennsylvania, I care a lot. I want more data on. This is what the numbers look like. And again, you can see it says as of 13 days before the election. I mean, this was as of yesterday, so we are very, very close. You can see in 2020, we'll start with Arizona. In 2020, and if you're just listening, 42% of the early mail-in ballots were for Democrats and 34% for Republicans. Basically, this year, it's completely flipped. It is now 42% for Republicans and 36% for Democrats. Guys, it cannot be overstated. That is huge. When we're talking about a state like Arizona, that I think Trump lost by like 10,000 votes. And what you're seeing here is, again, 42% of the ballots that have been put in are from Republicans. That's an 8% increase. And then, of course, you're seeing a decrease from Democrats as well. So it's not like Republicans are just making up ground among independents. They've made up ground from Democrats. That's Arizona. Nevada, in 2020, 44% went for Democrats, 33% went for Republicans. Then you have this year, it's basically flipped again. Not quite as dramatically as Arizona, but now it's 36% Democrats, 38% Republicans. So almost even there, but still a 5% increase for Republicans. And this is what's worse for Democrats, an 8% decrease. So a 5% increase for Republicans ain't that great. I mean, it's okay. It's good. But 8% decrease for Democrats, meaning that independent got bigger, meaning that presumably there might be more independents now in Nevada than there were before. In North Carolina, in 2020, again, you see, again, these are big shifts, and they're equal shifts. This is what is so fascinating. In 2020, 40% of the vote was for Democrats in early voting. By this point, it was 28% for Republicans. It's now 34%. That is a 6-point shift on both sides to make it a tie. 6 points on both sides it's so big. Like, you might hear those numbers and be like, 6%, that's not that big. Guys, it is massive in a state where, again, in Arizona or Nevada, where it was such small margins. Then we get to Pennsylvania, which of course is like the most important. And this is where it gets really staggering. 71% of the early mail-in ballots were for Democrats in 2020 and just 20% for Republicans. This year so far, Democrats have lost 10%. Down to 61%. Republicans gained 9%, up to 29%. That's the early voting. That is so big for Republicans, assuming, and this all assumes, that Republicans show up like they've showed up in the past on the day of. If they show up like they've showed up in the past on the day of, it's going to be a landslide victory. In fact, the early polling or the early voting looks so good for Republicans right now, they don't even need to show up like usual. They could show up half as good as usual, and they're still going to win this in a landslide. However, I do want to show the polling because the polling is astounding. And what I want to show you with this polling is not just simply how he's doing right now. I want to show you how Donald Trump is more popular now than he has ever been. It sounds crazy to say, but according to the polling, that is, though I actually do think that's true as well. I think he's more popular. He's going to win more electoral votes this time than he ever has. Take a look at this polling. This is from 538. Now, I've purposely chose 538 because it's with ABC. It is probably the most left-wing aggregate of the polls out there. And I just thought, hey, for the sake of argument, let's take the most left-wing so that there's no one in the comments that can say, oh, you just chose a right-wing aggregate of polls. This is what 2020 looked like at this time in the election, 12 days before the election. You can see Biden all the way down. Biden up by 11, up by 4, up by 8. Big numbers, right? Look, and again, in the end, it was about 2.6%, I believe, that Biden won by. That was in the national, the popular vote, which really doesn't matter. in the Electoral College was obviously even closer. Look at what it is today. And again, these are only the most left-wing polls because ABC does not take a lot of the right-wing polls. You see more Trump than you see Harris. Think about what that means. In some of these polls, you're seeing an 8 to 10 point swing for Donald Trump. That is such a big deal. If you go to the actual graph as well, where they actually kind of average everything, in 2020, on this exact day, October 24th, Biden had a 9.2% lead in the polls. Again, that number ended up being about 2.6. So they were off by like 6.5 points. Go to today now. In 2024, Harris is only up by 1.7. That is insane. That is such a, it just can't be overstated how big of a swing that is. And here's the deal, guys. Even if the polls, let's say for a second, I know there's a lot of you out there saying, no, but Josh, polls aren't real. They've been skewed. Fair enough. Just for a second, let's assume that they got the polls right. Let's just say they got it right. If the polls are right today, Trump wins. Trump absolutely wins because, and again, this is with the most left-wing aggregate, because if Harris wins the national vote by 1.7%, that is not enough to win the Electoral College. It's just not. I've done a lot of research on this. I think there's almost no one, left or right, would disagree with me that Harris is going to need about 2.5% on the national vote in order to win the Electoral College. If she's at 1.7, Trump wins. And Trump might win in an electoral landslide. Like he might take every single swing state. However, if the polls are skewed like usual, again, 6.5 point skew per 538, per ABC. If that was true, it would be a crazy landslide for Donald Trump. In fact, he would take states like Minnesota and Virginia, and of course, he'd win the popular vote as well. But even if that's not true, and even if the pollsters have learned a little bit, even if it's half skewed or a quarter skewed, Trump still wins in a landslide. And so, again, this early voting turnout combined with the polls looks so good for Donald Trump. I'm not saying don't go out in there and vote. As someone who, I already voted for Trump, by the way, I was one of those early voters. As someone who voted for Trump, I want people to be on the ground. It seems, though, from this early voting, that Trump has done what Democrats have done for so long, which is that he got the ground game going. And that is one of the reasons why I'm really happy with Donald Trump right now, is traditionally conservatives and Republicans have not been very good on the ground. It seems from this that they may be doing very well. They may even be ballot harvesting in the states that it's legal, which is absolutely fantastic because if the left are going to do it, you have to do it too. And then, of course, if you win the election, you can change the rules. But this early voting turnout is what is surprising me so much because one thing I've been very critical of Republicans in the past over is their rhetoric surrounding early voting. You've heard it a lot, but Republicans are out there saying, they really shoot themselves in the foot like this, but they're saying that don't go out and early vote, just go in person. Guys, it turns out that in order to win elections, you don't want to tell your electorate that they can't vote. You want them to vote in every way possible, and I'm sorry, there's just not that much widespread evidence that early voting is highly corruptible. It's if you want to show it to me and talk to me about it, absolutely, but I haven't seen it. And so it turns out that Trump is doing the exact right thing, which is that he's actually telling people, hey, in any way you want to vote, just vote for me. I don't care if you do it early. I don't know if you show up, but they're actually doing it, and it is fantastic. So if you think early voting should be illegal, fair enough, but we have to win an election to make it illegal. So let's do that. It sounds like Donald Trump is doing it. I am super thrilled. I think it's fantastic, and I think we're looking at a Trump victory. Well, guys, it is fall, and whether you're putting away those summer clothes or getting out those fall decorations, I have a product for you guys that you're absolutely going to love. It is called Smart Labels. Here's how it works. You buy some Smart Label QR code labels on Amazon, and you stick them to your storage bins. Then you download the Smart Labels app. You scan that QR code, and then you can catalog all the stuff that is in that bin with a name, a description, and a picture. Then, months down the road, let's say in a year from now, you're wanting to, or maybe, 8 months from now, you're trying to get those summer clothes out, rather than having to rifle through all your bins and go in the garage and lift 4 of them up so you can get to the bottom one. You can literally, and then it's the wrong bin, inevitably that happens. You can go into your app, you can search for what you want, and there will be a picture of exactly where it is. It is organizing magic, guys. Go get it today. Again, if you just simply search Smart Labels, it's one word, on Amazon, you can get them and get started so that you have a more enjoyable holiday season.